Welcome back to Bridging the Gap. I'm your host, Bria Baker, and we're celebrating Black History Month with some of the brilliant minds who brought us The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, about reframing Black narratives and why Black perspectives are essential to the authentic portrayal of Black lives in the media.
Yeah, I really never felt represented by much of what I saw on TV at all.
I feel like I'm choking up just talking about it, but it's like I never thought I'd get the chance to talk about things like that.
It's something we as Black people have to talk about.
Right.
We're, bold enough not to avoid the conversation.
Yeah.
Again, unapologetically Black.
I cannot tell you enough how excited I am to be joined by Tara Whitaker, Rolf Farquhar, Bruce Smith, and Latoya Raveneau. Thank y'all so much for being here and talking about The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. Tell us a little bit more about the series.
The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, is basically us revisiting unfinished business from 20 years ago. It's always about, sort of the coming of age of our own Penny Proud. But we also have tons of new characters in our world that we're introducing.
Yeah, but more importantly, we turn up the volume.
Yes.
It's louder now.
Louder.
And proud.
Yes.
But we brought in a couple of new folks. Kiki Palmer is playing Maya. We got Billy Porter, Zachary Quinto playing her parents. We got A Boogie with the hoodie. We're continuing what we did before. We're moving into areas of storytelling we didn't have an opportunity to do before. 20 years later, Penny may still be a teenager, but the world has progressed. So we're gonna delve into some really blackety-black stuff.
That's the only way to do it. The only way to do it is blackity black. I mean, and you just mentioned it, so this is obviously a reboot, and so because you both were a part of the original, what do you see as the new and distinct things that you're doing to really center Black narratives?
We're leaning into the LGBTQ characters through Michael, who was in the original series, but we really acknowledge who he is.
Yeah.
He's being voiced by E.J. Johnson. It's controversial, but we wanted to do it because within the African-American community, it's an issue.
Yeah.
And it's truth.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's really what, our show is really leaning into this time around, is really not skirting the issues.
Yeah. Like
the
talking
writing
about
room,
everything.
Exactly. The writing room has always been bold and, and confrontational in that way, really trying to drive with truth. And the value of that actually sort of sets our show apart. So you put that on the layer of characters. And then, also it's in the storytelling, aspect of it all. We wanted to make sure that, from the top down, it's fulfilling that sort of legacy. And that's why these two lovely ladies are on board here.
I'm so delighted to have been a director on The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. I felt it was an opportunity to share Black stories with the world and to bring these characters to life. I felt like they represented myself and my friends and the diverse community that I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Seeing all the beautiful Black art that was created just made a huge impression on me as a child, and I knew from that moment that I wanted to be an animator, actually, and which led to my directing. It was so important to me to tell authentic and true stories because that's not what I saw in the movies and TV very much, and so I wanted to make that difference and to tell those true and authentic stories that felt real to myself and to my community as well.
So because I was so young when the series came out, I think I didn't realize how unprecedented it was to see not just a Black protagonist, but a Black extended family and community depicted in such a beautiful and honest way and not just based off of scarcity. How do you feel that both the original and Louder and Prouder are navigating new narratives that need to be out there about Black people and Black families?
We knew going in that Penny's family was intact and already established. So we created a lot of characters in that space that give you, more of a fuller range of Black characters. And so in essence, if you're talking about the Proud Family, they all sort of become a part of the family, a part of the storytelling.
And that was what attracted me to this show because we had everything under one roof, and it presented an opportunity to portray the complexities of what it means to be Black, particularly what it means to be a young Black woman growing up in America, and something that has nothing to do with race, just being a kid.
I think it's reframing it even within the characters themselves. Like Kareem, Penny's boyfriend, is one of my favorite characters of all time because he's not a type of Black male character you see a lot. He plays the cello, which is one of my favorite instruments, and I'm not at all biased about that, but he's also like incredible incredibly athletic, and it's like you don't see the complicated, exactly, like you don't see the fullness of a black character
Kareem
often.
is the perfect boyfriend.
Don't worry about it, right?
And that's the thing, like I knew kids like Kareem growing
Yeah.
up, but I never saw
You never
kids
saw
like
them,
him on
yeah.
TV.
Or even like complicating Dijonay. Like I
Yes.
think it's challenging the tropes of these characters and like putting these layers that like complicate your ideas of like, who is this person? It's like, oh, they're vulnerable in this really interesting way, or oh, they're like brilliant in this really interesting way.
And that's the beauty of having a series where you get more real estate to tell more, give you more portions of who this character is. They're not just one thing.
Yeah.
And that's the fun thing, is really sort of our characters end up being, you know, sort of like artichokes in a sense.
Just
You know,
peeling
because they
away.
just keep peeling back and you discover something new about them all the time. I think that's why people really end up loving Sugar Mama, is because we took her on so many different places, you know, that really started to open up like, oh, this woman ain't just mean to Oscar, she has layers to her, you know, and we'll discover more in this version of the series as well. But you mentioned Dijonay, sort of the same way. The outside will look at Dijonay and think that she fits some sort of a stereotype, but because we have the real estate to kind of give you a true deep dive into what and who Dijonay is, those little small Easter eggs will help paint a fuller picture of who she is. And that's along with a lot of the other characters.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And I think it releases the pressure on any one character to have to represent the entire community.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because
an
they get to
avatar.
represent different parts of it. And I mean, Tara, you were just mentioning that like you grew up with kids like Kareem and you never saw that. In your experience, what was it like growing up and just seeing narratives on TV that felt very flat, very two-dimensional?
I really never felt represented by much of what I saw on TV at all until I saw Proud Family, and then I was like, oh, okay, I know these girls, I know these kids, this is me and my friends. And that was a powerful, magical experience.
For me, because I'm so old, it just made me go outside and play.
I just stopped watching.
I was around at the beginning of TV. It was like, oh, okay, there's nothing there for me. I wasn't that interested, and that's the truth.
For me, it was like a simultaneously feeling like I wasn't doing blackness right because I wasn't seeing a version of it that looked like my family. And at the same time, like the things I was loving, which is like, you know, all these like anime shows and the action stuff, didn't have characters that looked like me. And so it made me like feel like I couldn't be part of those stories. I like never thought like, oh, I could be in this sort of a story because there's no black women in that type of a world. Like there's no like magical girl show with a black girl or something. So I just felt like I wasn't allowed in those types of spaces.
I grew up loving animation that certainly didn't involve me. Growing up listening to the Flintstones and the Jetsons, you know, you wondered like, okay, well then I guess we didn't exist in prehistoric times, and I guess they don't think we're gonna be here in the future either. So, you know, what do you do about that? I remember being a kid drawing my version of the Flintstones, you know, just like, oh, what happens if, you know, the black people were here and doing the Jetsons? What happens if black people are here? But you realize that that seed planted in me. And so as I continued to kind of like make my way into this business, I still knew that, man, nobody's gonna do this, huh? So that's why it was important to see myself on screen to sort of make this happen. As a kid growing up, I never really had a role model that told me that I could do animation. So I had to kind of navigate this space by myself and come to the realization that I got to get really good in this medium to be able to create a television show that I think could bring a whole posse of folks behind me to want to create and continue to create content that relates specifically to their families as well. Animation is a great medium because you can go and do anything. You can tell lots of stories in lots of different places using lots of different genres to do so. So we choose to do that frequently with the Proud Family, and it creates for fun hijinks, yet still very grounded stories that really paints the diaspora for us as black folk.
The Proud Family Louder and Prouder features a black teen heroine, Penny Proud. What can we expect from Penny this time around?
I think we can expect some of what we saw in the first series, but I think we can also see
like those same concepts like expanded on. Penny and her friends, you know, coming up against different issues, you know, maybe some injustice that they see that they want to stand up against.
They come against what? What are they coming against? Like, say it.
I was
Say
just
it.
thinking it because I even remember activism coming up in the
Yeah.
original. There's the episode where Penny is leading the entire neighborhood of kids to protest the chores and they weren't being paid enough for their chores.
Right?
Right. I'm like, okay, so Penny was unionizing the block, but what are some of the newer themes that we can kind of expect?
Should I give it? I don't want to give away too much.
Absolutely. Girl, you go
Give
in.
us a tease.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, Maya and Penny, like they are coming up against a historical figure that was a slave owner, and he's someone who's being commemorated in their community, and they're like, no, we are not going to celebrate this man. You know, we're going to get our friends together, we're going to stand up, and this is what we believe in. This is wrong. This guy does not deserve to be celebrated.
We're kind of going at it this time, you know, straight on. So topics of racism, gender identification, social media.
Yeah.
What's happening with that, with this whole influencer thing.
The effect on like a teenage psyche.
Yeah.
You know,
We also, you know, we deal with reparations and how the kids feel about that.
look, this is not a topic of the week type of show. We do it all with fun. We're informative. We have a ton of heart, but we don't shy away from the reality
Right.
of our existence as people, whether it be Sugar Mama, Penny's, Maya's, her two dads.
What I love about the show is that when I first was watching it, obviously I'm coming from the perspective of Penny, but now as I get older, I'm also really curious to see Oscar and Trudy's perspectives on this very changing world and how they parent differently. What would you all say we can expect to see from them as like a couple, but as two parents, two Black parents?
Oscar is struggling.
He was struggling
You can
before.
expect to see Oscar continuing to struggle.
Okay.
But I really love Oscar as kind of like a storytelling vector because he is this kind of like more change adverse, more steeped in like potentially toxic masculinity. Like he is a really good example of how things don't change easily, especially with his relationship with Maya's two dads. Like that's one of my favorite stories because it shows how complicated that situation is. And like as a person in the queer community, I feel like it is very interesting to think about it within the context of like the Black community where it's like all these other layers in it too. So I'm like, I love watching these characters try to navigate that.
Yeah.
And the Oscar Trudy relationship is like still going strong, just a delight.
Well, that's the great thing about the Oscar character is that we can assign attitudes to him that normally would be unattractive, okay? But because he is Oscar, we give him a pass, right?
Yeah.
And then we get a chance to examine that behavior and seeing it played out. And that's the only way to progress the conversation.
Right.
You can't pretend that
Everyone's
everybody...
progressive.
Everybody...
It's a beautiful liberal utopia. We did it.
I mean, I remember when we were first bringing up the LGBTQ community, and people came and said, "Oh, you know, people don't care about that anymore." And we said, "Not in the Black community."
Right.
I'm not making this up. I'm telling you what people talk about in the kitchen at the family gathering. It's something we as Black people have to talk about.
Right, right.
You know, and
It's
you know,
very polarizing, yeah.
people were giving us notes who had no idea. The value of bringing your own experience into your writing is that it's authentic. I can only bring my point of view of being an African American in America in 2022. It may not be the next person's, but it's valid for me. And as long as it's valid for one person, then it's true. That's why I challenge all my writers to say, give me your stories. What have you gone through? And then we take that and we adapt it. So when you get into the area of just making up stuff, that it starts ringing hollow and untrue. To me, I can't imagine telling any story without bringing aspects of my life to it. So if I'm breathing, I'm writing.
What are the conversations you hope families are having after they watch some of these episodes?
You know, I hope it just inspires people to listen. You know, listen to your kids. You know, don't assume you know everything that they're feeling and thinking and forcing your desires and wishes and lifestyles on your kids. Like, listen to your kids. Your kids are their own people. You know, just kind of let them be themselves and turn into the adults that they're going to be on, you know, on their own.
One of the most frequent pushbacks on our storytelling is that our stories don't resolve the way traditional, you know, stories through the, I'll just say it, through the white gaze, how they resolve. Going to Tara's thing, just listen. You know what I mean? You just got to listen to the folks who are trying to tell the story, and it's not going to resolve the way you want it to resolve, but the people who will see this episode will be, those will be like, oh yeah, that's exactly what this is.
Why is it important to show Black girls specifically as protagonists, as the leads of their own stories?
I need to throw this to Tara because I have thoughts, but I need to hear your
Oh.
thoughts.
Well, you know, we are the heroes of our own story, and I think other people should know that we are heroes too, because that's how we see ourselves. I mean, I always have, and you know, I really have my parents to thank for that. They've always been so supportive of me. Being an artist and, you know, being the protagonist of my own narrative in my life. And so I think that's important for little Black girls to see, but other kids to see Black girls as that.
Yeah, definitely. Because I do think there's a trend of Black women being the spunky best friend.
The sidekick.
The I fix you and I make you better than, But like, it's so beautiful to see characters who, Penny is the protagonist and she's lifted up by other Black women, right, around her, but also Zoe and La Cienega, and to see her as the hero. I mean, I'd love to hear your perspective on that too.
It's what the Proud Family really kind of broke my brain when I was younger, was just like, there's Penny, but there's also Dejanay, and there's also La Cienega, and then they'd like meet one-off characters. I'm like, ooh, that person was cool. And it's just like, their world was so big and all of their personalities were so different and so vibrant. Even like working with Tara, like we're so similar and we're so different, and being able to like give our differences to this character of Penny was amazing.
Yes,
Like,
and bounce off of each other. I feel like, it was great.
Yeah, Black Girl Magic was real on our show.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. And that's what happens when you have more than one Black woman. It's not like, oh, let me run to you, Latoya, for every Black woman question because no one else knows the Black woman experience.
Yes.
So Ralph, you have mentioned that this iteration of the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, is going to touch on a lot more themes. And I'm just curious to know if and how the show is addressing colorism. You know, I'm a very light-skinned Black woman, so I'm conscious of my own privileges within the community. And I'm curious how Penny becomes more conscious of potentially her privileges.
Well, you know, first the way we're dealing with it is actually within the characters you see. You know, Bruce and I sat down before we started this round of the show, and we said, okay, what's wrong with this picture? You know, so we've got to increase the number of tones you see, just like right here on the stage right now. You have a range, okay? And this is the range that we now reflect in our show. And assigning different qualities to each of these characters, not necessarily the ones you expect for their complexion, if you will. There's been some correct discussion about Dejanay's character, about the dark girls always being such a way. So we brought in some dark-skinned girls who expand what that definition is.
And with the male characters as well.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like we make sure we span the spectrum and give certain personalities characters so we don't fall under the trope of what you would normally expect, you know, from any animated show. We pride ourselves on showing the spectrum. We're not afraid of it. There's shows that call themselves Black shows and you look at the cast and they're all the same because they avoid the conversation. We're, you know, bold enough not to avoid the conversation. Again, unapologetically Black.
I want it on the shirt.
Definitely. How would you all, specifically Latoya and Tara, say that you saw that within this female friend group, colorism coming up?
With the character of Dejanay especially, like I like some of the complications we put into her and kind of try to subtly show those moments where there's this one episode in particular where we kind of go in on like the girls' friend group dealing with race. And I tried to really show Dejanay in particular feeling that like sting of it when you realize that like your complexion, something you have no control over, something that does not matter, something that is beautiful, affects the way that other people see you. I feel like I'm choking up just talking about it, but it's like I never thought I'd get the chance to talk about things like that.
It's rare that you talk about that even in live action shows, let alone an animated show.
Absolutely.
And that's great. I mean, that's a credit to, you know, to everything that comes from the writing room, that we actually can tell these types of stories and still be in the lane of enjoying what this show is,
Yeah.
but still carry heavy issues. It's
Yeah.
the best way to do the show.
Yeah, but you see it in the character designs, everything from complexion to hair texture, all those things are there. No one model for blackness.
Right.
And so,
Even in the incidentals,
yeah,
like it's just
yeah,
amazing.
exactly.
Oh yeah, people
So-
you see in the background of all the shows will have all these different sort of, real care and taken to them, and they appear every episode, which is
Yeah.
funny. So,
Yeah, there's this one girl that I'm like, that's just Tara.
walking around the
She's just strolling in the street. But yeah, what did you feel about it, Tara? I'm curious.
Well, I have to say, as a director, it was really an opportunity for me to make those choices. Because previously, as a character designer, I could be like, hey, we should make these characters dark-skinned girls. And it wouldn't happen because I didn't have the power to, make those executive creative decisions, which I did now. So that was just amazing for me to be like, okay, hey, this is what I suggest, and it went through. So thank you.
and again, what Tara's saying is what we probably all experience in this animation
Yes.
business. We are now, changing that narrative as a collective, and so now pushing forward, that's what we will continue to do, and that's what happens when you start to see yourself on screen and you sort of gain,
And we extended that complexity to the Latinx community, by introducing Afro-Latino characters. It's the whole thing we're going for, here.
And I think that's a testament to what is so beautiful about having Black creators in positions of power, because you're giving notes to each other, you're bouncing ideas off of one another, and so you don't have to worry about, ooh, is this gonna get shot down? It's like, no, the director's a Black woman, the creator's a Black
Yeah,
like,
we have conversations all the time. It's like, hey, Bruce, just need to take a moment to discuss this thing, and we'll talk it through and kind of talk about the way something might read, or what my experience or his experience, and I have never been able to do that because I've always been the one Black person.
Yeah.
If I could give a young Black storyteller one piece of advice, it would be the advice I would give myself when I was a young Black storyteller, which is your experience as a Black person is valid. My parents are from St. Lucia in the West Indies, and I always felt like I wasn't seeing the version of Blackness that I was experiencing on television. It made me question whether those stories were valid, whether they were worth telling, and it kind of made me afraid to be authentically myself. And the older I got, the more I realized that the things that I took for granted, people were really excited about hearing, and I'm just lean all the way in to the aspects of your lived experience or the aspects of your stories that are unusual, that you're not sure if other people will understand, because those are the stories that I think excite and that really activate and resonate with other people when they hear them. Just lean all the way in.
why is it so important that Black people and Black creators are the ones telling our own stories? What is it that we bring to the table that's so unique?
There's a level of authenticity that no amount of research, no amount of consulting can really emulate. And I'll never forget, there was this one conversation we had on Proud Family about specifically Black women's hair care before sleep and sleep routines. I've never had a conversation like that ever on any show, but it was amazing. And it was me, Tara, our board artist, and the Black writers. We were debating, and it was just, I don't know, it was just the most authentic conversation I've ever had, and it influenced the character.
Absolutely, because even within our own community, we all have different hair texture. It all requires different care and different maintenance. So I think it was really important we had that discussion.
They're questions that I think you don't even think to ask if you're not of the specific community you're talking about. And that's why I think that if you're going to talk about, especially if you're going to talk about issues of race or issues of the Black experience or the experience of a character of color, you need people who have lived that experience.
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
Well, more importantly, you need someone who values it. To me, that's the biggest thing we bring to the table. Not only do we value ourselves and our point of view, but we value our talent, like these folks here right now. And without that, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. Not just Bruce and I, but any Black showrunner, creator in this town. They bring a lot of stuff and people to the table because they're Black and they're unafraid to revel in who we are. And so that's the thing. Look, we say Proud Family, we're unapologetically Black. We're not trying to be anything else.
Yeah.
But by being true to who we are, that brings in everyone. because
Yeah.
everyone is attracted to that honesty, that
Absolutely.
truth.
I feel like this conversation can go on for days. I am so grateful to each of you for coming onto the show, for talking so honestly about what you're doing to reframe Black narratives through the Proud Family Louder and Prouder. So thank y'all so, so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Man,
thank
this
you.
has been amazing.
Be sure to watch The Proud Family Louder and Prouder and check out the Celebrate Black Stories collection, all streaming on Disney+. Happy Black History Month, and we'll see you next time.